This is Dying Your Way.
Welcome everyone to the Dying Your Way podcast. I'm Claire O'Berry. I'm your host, and we're a podcast that dives deep into conversations that just aren't discussed often enough. We talk about death, we talk about grief, and we talk about the sacred work of preparing for the end of life. And today's guest fulfills all of those requirements. He has a very compelling story, not only because of the work that he's doing now, but because of the work that he's done in the past. And Ryan Bell is a licensed family service advisor with Dignity Memorial. It is the largest funeral service provider in the world. I did not know that. But he is also a grief guide and a death doula in training and founder of deathworker.com. And what makes Ryan's story so powerful and so compelling is really the convergence of seemingly totally separate worlds, from being a very high profile, having a very high profile, I'm going to say this, having a very high profile marketing career. He's worked with Comcast and NASA. He's even won Emmys with the work that he has done with some of his clients. And he has also a lived experience of living with autism and living with ADHD, and a personal reckoning that really brought him from a very fast-paced, career-driven life to working in the death care industry, which I find fascinating, the stories that people have that lead them to this calling. So we're going to get a very fresh and compassionate point of view with Ryan, and I'm just eager to introduce him to you now. So here is Ryan. Hey, Ryan, welcome. In Atlanta, where it's evening and it's morning here in Western Australia. How are you?
I'm well. I don't know that we have anything to talk about now. With that long introduction. I don't know where to even go with that.
Was anything okay? Do you want to correct anything about the introduction?
No,
Because
no,
I could have
no, no.
easily have gotten something wrong.
No, no. It's just I was just talking to a friend earlier today about how like everything in our past just doesn't you hit a point where it doesn't either seem real or it doesn't matter, and the only thing that matters is like what you're doing now, I think that's kind
Totally
of,
relate.
yeah, that's kind of like a way that, because a lot of my life just kind of feels like a bad movie sometimes, and it's like, oh, I don't really remember that. I don't like
Well,
pre
a good story is not boring. So all the things in my past that led me to
right,
where I
right.
am right now, I can at least say it hasn't been boring.
Yeah, I got diagnosed as autistic like last year, and so it's like there's kind of a before death, before Christ and after death type of feeling, like it's
Okay,
been really.
let me just go there because you just mentioned it and I didn't. I mean, I talked about ADHD and you just said autistic. So
Mhm.
I just am, before we even talk about the death industry or what you're doing now, I just really want to know what happened to you. You said 2022 was a pivotal year for you. So just kind of go back to 2022 and going through what transitioned in your life and this autism diagnosis and how that has changed the course of your life, really, if you don't mind talking about it.
Um, yeah, yeah. It, it I, at the end of 2022, I was highly stressed, but I don't know if you've been in this position where you just think that that high level of stress is just normal, and like this is just my life. I've just got to swallow it, and I've just got to trudge through, and I've just got to turn the wrench. Um, I wasn't doing great at my job. I didn't like my job. I was making good
The,
money.
the marketing.
Yeah, I was at that time it was my title was head of demand gen or something. It was marketing. It was put as many leads in the funnel as you can. It wasn't meaningful. It was one of those things where in 8 months or so I had like eight bosses, and some of them overlaps. There's so much transition. But two of my closest friends died, and
Mm.
and at the same time, in the same
Were
couple of
they
weeks.
expected deaths or unexpected
Neither,
deaths?
no, heroin overdose and heart attack.
Ow.
And my uncle died, and I had someone that was in my life that, for lack of a better word, disappeared and became something different. So I had these two
Mm.
people that I loved very dearly, and then at the same time I had two people that were very abusive towards me throughout my
Mm.
life. And I don't think yeah, back then, I look back on it now. I look back on a lot of things now with a new lens. And y- that new lens comes with, this is what I was all along. I didn't realize what I was. And that's really a weird thing. And
Well,
so,
you were never
I-
given a proper diagnosis, I'm guessing.
right, right. Exactly.
Mm.
And that diagnosis is so helpful because, like, my internal monologue was always like, shh, be quiet, you're weird. Like, there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
Um, and as I've come to understand my neurodivergence, and now I look back and I see the special things that I've done in my life through having a disability. But it's also not a disability. It's also a different way of looking at things. It's also a way to look at taking care of yourself because you're processing things differently. So
Mm.
back into back to processing those, as 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 I managed three funerals in three different states in some capacity, even doing a GoFundMe for one of them. um, I wasn't processing any of these things. I wasn't, and it was, it was, I think it was an accumulation of a lifetime
Mm.
of abuse. And I want to say this very, very clearly. I think that if you are autistic or ADHD or whatever, or if you are undiagnosed, you are abusing yourself because you don't know how to take care of yourself. So a lifetime of abuse, it can come from family, it can come from trauma. It often does. It comes from a million different places. But the reality is, in the end, you have to start taking accountability matters more for where you are and how you're going to make these things better. So,
Mm.
after the diagnosis, um, I mean, it didn't come like boom right after Rob and Evan, right after they passed. It wasn't like that. It sat in me, like everything sat in me and boiled and festered and became something that it shouldn't have. And I mean, for the past few weekends, I've been wanting to go to my hometown and visit the grave of one of my friends that I lost in high school. I
One these recent past few weekends, you've had that
Yes,
desire.
and because I've realized that, like, when you're healing, you graduate inward. Like, you're peeling the layers of an onion. You're
Mm.
you're finding the trauma, and then you're finding what the trauma's on top of, and then you're finding what the trauma, and
Layered
so
onions, peeling it back. Yeah,
and it all makes you cry, it all makes you cry, and so uh, there's so much to attend to, but that really my diagnosis of being autistic was so important to me, and I'm so much more connected with myself and loving of myself. I mean, God, I barely could get out the word loving because it's been so hard for me to love myself for a long time. It still
wow.
feels weird, but it's a new awakening. It's I cannot tell you how hard it's been. It has been so hard but I decided after all of this that I needed to rebuild my life in a more complete way. And I've volunteered all my life, but
Me too.
I've never done anything like meaningful as like my my full-time job. I positioned myself as doing something meaningful as my full-time job. I think I think I did some good at NASA.
Well, you won
I
an
don't I
Emmy. You part of a team that won an Emmy. That's pretty
yeah,
amazing.
I mean driving eyeballs to science and education is great, and being a part of that. And I love some of the things that I took with me, but my favorite thing that I took from NASA was, the thought that if you take all the sand and all the oceans in all of this world, that wouldn't be as many stars as there are in the sky. It's like that
Mm.
context when you grab a handful of sand and you think like each of one of these is the sun, and then you think all the bottom of the ocean, all the beaches, all the sand. There's more stars than that. I-
Wow.
it- so you think about that, and you think about death, and you think about life, and you think about the endlessness of the universe, and you think of the way that Bluetooth works and your Nintendo Switch controller works, and you wonder why all the vibrations between humans aren't as as recognized as the remote control. We don't know how the remote control works, but everything's connected. I don't know, but it all it all come for me, it just everything came down to understanding grief in a meaningful way until the understanding of grief was an understanding of beauty. And that's when I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life because I can't do what I've done before. I am a monotropic person. I need to focus on one thing.
Mhm.
And if I'm in marketing or media strategy or whatever the hell they're going to call it when they put me in in at the desk and say, Ryan, do something special. I, I want to do something that I can focus on and that I can never understand. And grief, death, spirituality, the human condition, unraveling
Mm.
trauma, the relationships and of humans and where our generational trauma comes from because we look at it so myopically, so granularly that we don't think about the ancestral things that we have to deal with. But
I mean, it sounds like that you've really taken your entire life, but really spent the last few years being introspective of why you are where you are, why you are who you are, and that there is got to be a gift that is special that's yours that you are bringing to the world. And you could only bring that gift to the world unless you had gone through all of the things that you've gone through. And so now, and I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, and I don't mean to put words into your mouth. One of the things that draws me into working with the end of life community, and I've said this to others and maybe even on podcast, I don't know, but it's that the thing I love about end of life is that people are more authentic than they ever are.
Right.
I was listening to a podcast this morning. I mean, someone that everybody knows, and he was talking about his father dying. And this is a guy that is like so buttoned up, but he wanted to, in that moment, pay tribute to his father with all of their flaws.
Mm.
And he was choking up. And it was in that moment of him dropping the veil of being this hot podcast host, and he's like being a real person. It's only because of the death and the grief that he's presently going through. And he
Yeah.
didn't have a great relationship with his father, but it led him to an authentic um, view of himself that he will, be integrating that experience for months and years. I'm sure we all do. Anytime we lose someone, it takes a while to integrate that. But I'm digressing, and I don't want to cut you off because it's
No,
fascinating
no.
what you're saying. But it's you are who you are, and you are where you are because of and you're called the way you are because of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
That's a
thought,
lot to navigate all at once. I mean, it really is. I have to say that.
oh, I recognize the fact that this is the opening of me parsing through a lot of things. And then I'm okay with that because you know how most of us, especially men, and I'm not the most macho or masculine human on the planet, but like the rub some dirt on it culture, you can't heal that fast. You can't run with a broken leg. And so there's been so many things in my life that have said slow down, and I've got to, but
Which
I think
isn't
that
easy if you have ADHD.
no,
Most
no, no. ADHD and autism are hilarious to have together because it's like having the gas on and the brakes at the same time. And so like that's
I
why
love that.
you don't get diagnosed until late with ADHD and autism because the ADHD makes you
It balances it out.
yeah, it makes you more personable, and it makes you less Sheldon from 30 Rock or Third Rock or whatever. I can't
Yeah.
remember the movie, but
The
um
Big Bang Theory.
yeah, one of those nerd shows,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's interesting because I appreciate the unique perspective that it gives me, and I understand the perspective. And so autistic people have bottom up thinking, and neurotypical people have top down thinking. So
What do you
a
mean by neurotypical? Because I don't
neuro
particularly know that word, so other
uh,
listeners may not.
neurotypical is most of the population. So 85%
Oh,
of the
okay.
people have think in conventional traditional ways. Um, uh, Neurodivergent, which would be autism, OCD, ADHD, ADD, a bunch of all the other letters that are on that. Um, they think in a different pattern. They think from the bottom up. So you're looking at an entire picture and you're trying to solve it. We're looking from the bottom and we're looking at each component, and we've sometimes we have to solve each component sequentially before we can even see the big picture. So some of us, we might even know that the big picture is there, but it's not going to become illuminated. So you'll talk to autistic people and
Interesting.
they'll get really stuck, and they'll ruminate really bad. And so an interesting fact about autism is the high rate of unaliving themselves because of the high rumination patterns that
What do you
they
mean
that they
unaliving themselves?
it's a
Taking their life?
kind of,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
you're not
Yeah. Thank
supposed.
you.
There's a word that
YouTube would jump all over me on that. So yeah.
yeah,
Good.
there's a word that we're not supposed to say that I'm trying
Yeah.
to say
Okay.
between the
I'm
lines.
there.
So that's a very scary thing for people because of that, and it brings the lifespan down quite a lot. So one of the things that I've learned
Yeah.
as
It's they live 20 years less than neurotypicals. I had
and
never heard that statistic before. Wow.
so there's a lot of statistics out there, and one of the first ones that I found out after I got diagnosed was that like autistic people have an average lifespan to like 37 or something like that. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm already dead. Great. Um, but it was one of those things where there were so many things that were telling me like, look, your life isn't as long as you thought it was going to be, or your life is going to be harder, both all these things. And it was during a time when everything was kind of, all of the comfortable insulations that I'd created around myself, all the facades that I'd created, all the, all the BS, I want to cuss
Hmm.
so bad because I'm frustrated as I look back on how much of my life that I lived in a very grayscale type of way.
Yeah.
And, going back to the way that I was talking about my life, like I didn't enjoy it because I wasn't there. Like I wasn't there. I was going through the motions. I was doing things that I thought were what I should be doing for maybe somebody else or so yeah, for me, I had to go down this deep rabbit hole of understanding trauma, of understanding some abuse patterns that I had sought out because there's such thing as comfort in chaos. If you see these chaotic patterns as a pattern seeker, you're going to find them later on in life, and you're going to end up in the same type of toxicities and things like that.
And it sounds
And
like one of the ways that you worked through that was working with others that had substance abuse disorders or something that was self-medicating to deal with some of these problems that you started working with and supporting other people. Yeah.
yes, I've been working in a lot of crisis and abuse recovery in my spare time. Um, and I've found that a lot of neurodivergent, for the key word of the podcast, people tend to be targeted because of their ability to hyper focus on people that might want a lot of attention. And then they also don't neurodivergent people don't tend to have the boundaries that most people do, put up the boundaries
Hmm.
and say no
Hmm.
a lot. So neurodivergent people end up in abusive relationships a lot, and
Yeah.
as you can imagine, that turns out very poorly a lot of times.
No, I'll share this quick story with you for what it's worth, because what it taught me is that and this is about autism, that it's a spectrum disease. And some people can function at a very, very, very high level, and for others,
Yeah,
it's just not the case. But I'm a big fan of Temple Grandin, and she was speaking live to a bunch of cattle owners, in Texas. And I've got I raised cattle on a ranch in Texas. I mean, I'm not there right now, but I was really into learning all that I could. And she, was a professor at Colorado State University, and she's like done all of these incredible transforming of the beef industry because she's so connected to the animals that she could see that to humanely um, slaughter them, they needed to be going in a circular pattern instead of a linear pattern. And Burger King, McDonald's, all of these people that, go through beef started implementing her practices. And what I mean, how she, her words, not mine, the kill rate, which you want to be high because you don't want animals to suffer. The kill rate went from, you know, I mean, it lowered it. It went to 97%, and there was a much lower kill rate. So that was a humane way to slaughter the beef because of these practices, because it made the animals calm as they were going to slaughter. Anyway, I was so enamored with her. I went to the table where she was having a book signing after the conversation, and I'm buying her book and I'm asking her to sign my book. And she was polite, but honestly, she could not look me in the eye. And it wasn't just me, it was everyone. So she just got finished speaking, lecturing as a professor in a college comfortably would to hundreds of people. But when it came to the table and the writing, she couldn't deal one-on-one. It was just too much, Maybe I was too much, I don't know. But it really fascinated me, the gifts that, even Elon Musk would admit that he has, Asperger's syndrome, so there are just people that have incredible gifts because of the neurodivergency that they've been diagnosed with. So it's not necessarily all bad, is the reason I'm bringing that up.
But yeah, the reason, so it's called masking. So Temple Grandin and most autistic folks don't particularly like looking at people in the eye. We're actually better at listening and engaging if we're looking away.
Okay.
So camouflaging is more along the lines of, if we are looking, we are pretending to be like a neurotypical. But all these things that we do to fit in are exhausting, and that's the main problem of being autistic is exhausting. And so to put it into perspective, if you're autistic, your mind at rest is using 42% more energy than a neurotypical's mind at rest.
Wow.
So they have the brain scans, and of course the brain is all lit up and everything like that. So our problem is a processing problem. And so let me put it this way, another way. It's like we're running a MacBook in a world of PCs, but the problem is the MacBook has to use multiple PC emulators to run multiple programs, and it has no filtration system. So like every sound, I have a lot of I have a lot of sound issues, and so when I get stressed out, I get tinnitus. And my tinnitus, it goes from just the old emergency broadcast system to just clanging, screaming.
Wow.
And the fact is that the spectrum, people a lot of times think of a spectrum as a line. It's really not that. It's a circle, and there's multiple spikes coming out of the circle with multiple different spectrums. So you look at, maybe somebody's got sound, somebody's got touch, somebody's got whatever. And the disability comes here because there's a lot of people that hate sound, but is are all these things enough to actually be disabling? And when you do, so if somebody's listening to this and is like, this guy sounds a lot like me, you can do the cat Q or the cat I, and that is the camouflaging autistic traits questionnaire, and it's free online.
Say the name of the test again.
The cat I and the cat Q, CATI and CATQ.
Okay.
That should be up on, like, there's one website called neurabuse.com, NEURABUSE, and then there's another one. Oh, I can't remember it right now, but that first one should be fine. And so yeah, I just had a friend take it yesterday. Wait, no, day before yesterday. Um, and she scored higher than me, and I scored really high, and she had no idea that she might be autistic. And so now she's reading a book called Unmasking Autism, in
Mhm.
which I handed off to her because she
Well,
found out.
share that link with me. I don't want to interrupt you. Hold that thought. Share that link with me, and we can put it in the show notes if people want to take that test. But anyway, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
hundred I 100% will. Um, but yeah, a lot of people are being diagnosed now because, especially like our generation, nobody was diagnosing Asperger's until 1993, and then there's a lot of they weren't diagnosing it well, and it's a 70% overlap rate with ADHD, which hides it, and in the DSM, you weren't allowed to diagnose both until 2013. So there's so many reasons that we weren't able to get diagnosed, and females get diagnosed super late. That's another so I found out through a lot of work that my autism is I'm kind of wired in the feminine. Um,
Hmm.
so which explains a lot about me. And then,
Hmm.
like, on that note, 70 to 80%, over 70% of autistic people are on the LGBTQIA spectrum. So it's like you just get everything, and you have to figure out so much. But what's life without questions, right? So screw it. If what does Descartes say? Know thyself. At least I got some hard work ahead of me. That'll be fun to figure myself out.
Well, and yeah, I mean, again, I just think that all of these experiences have been very unique for you from what I'm hearing, and that, now you're in the death care industry and working with really supporting others. So, I mean, so
Right.
talk about that transition to where you touched on it briefly with the death of close
Death of
friends
my
and
friends.
relatives, but
Yeah.
I mean, you're the largest funeral service provider in the world, so that's not a small feat in and of itself.
And it's very intentional. So I started looking at Dignity Memorial, and I was like, where's a place where I can do what I want to do and where I can grow? And as I started doing more research and talking to people, like, they're really they really care about, like, compassionate care. and
Mm.
and I kept thinking, like, what does that look like? What does my future look like if I do that? And what do I start to learn about? And so if you look at Temple Grandin as a specialist in cattle and cattle movement and stuff like that, autistic people love their special interests. So one of my special
Mm.
interests is in human composting, which I saw you like. Holy crap, human composting is so cool. And, like, as a kind of a tech nerd, I know this doesn't seem techy, but, like, if you're talking about an industry that hasn't seen innovation in a freaking 100 years, like real innovation, uh, then this is actually innovation, but it's also backwards innovation, because it's like it's green. It's the greenest way to do it, other than, it's it's pretty brilliant and wonderful. And so I live
Well,
in Georgia.
at Dignity Memorial, do they provide that, or do they have a green burial sites for people that want to avoid the concrete vaults and just letting the body naturally decompose? Do they provide that?
We do not do green burials yet that I know of, but we do the human composting. So human composting
Oh, okay.
is, and so I have been,
So explain more to the audience what is entailed in human composting, because I have an idea, but you tell me.
okay. Oh, okay. So human composting, it was. let's go back to Temple Grandin. It used to be called Terram. Well, it's called terramation, and it's one of the ways that they would get rid of cow carcasses. Boy, we've talked about a lot about
A
cow
lot of
death.
cattle.
Lot of cattle death today there. Um, but so what they're doing is they have they basically turn you to mulch. So we have these vessels, and you are mixed in, and in a 30 to 45 day process, as you go through the process in the vessel, no water, no electricity, no nothing, just this process, you are turned completely into mulch. I think that's really an amazing thing because, with cremation, the cremation industry, everybody's using 350 pounds or whatever it is of methane
Mhm.
to turn a body into something that has absolutely no value to ash. Uh, but in this way, you can have something that ends up, in my opinion, more meaningful. You get dirt, you get soil that you can scatter. I want to see a future where we have like memorial mountain bike parks where people are putting plaques up on trees and stuff like that.
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of beautiful things that we can do
I'm
in our
going to give you
preparation.
I'm going to give you an idea
Give it. Let's go.
that's going to make you money because nobody's doing it in the United States. So there might be some licensing here in Australia, but because I think it's over on the East Coast somewhere in Sydney or something where they have this. There is a green burial site that there is, no headstones, no markers, nothing like that. It's just what they call here going back to bush. I
Hmm.
mean, it's very planned out and paths, and you're
I
walking
love that
around,
term.
and you can, with an app on your phone, you can visit this green burial site, and at certain geolocators, the voice of the person that died is recorded. And as you're walking by, you can actually hear their story because it's pre recorded. And so you're walking in the sacred bush, where they have been put back to earth in a green burial style, but they're
Right.
not forgotten. And it's
I
just
love
like,
that.
when I heard about that, I was like, going, oh God, because I love to go to cemeteries and I love to read the headstones and I love to, get the stories that people have are just so fascinating to me. But when I heard that idea, I was like going, oh my God, that's just brilliant. So anyway, you just take
That's
that and run with
phenomenal.
it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Going back to Bush, that's such a cool term too. I like that a lot.
And
That's
like at the Fremantle Cemetery here on the West Coast, they have this huge memorial cemetery where people are, traditionally buried, except people lease the plots for 99 years. And sometimes family members are buried on top of each other. They've been embalmed, they're in the casket, they're on top of each other. So that's sort of a traditional burial here in Australia. But they have a part of the park that they've just designated to be a natural burial site. And there's a grid, so you kind of have an idea where your loved one, is buried. But the only way you would know is that there's a certain seating area where there's this beautiful natural, um, you know, seating area, but there are like plaques behind and says the name of the person and their date of birth and date of death. So I mean, they're there. You're not exactly sure where because they've all gone
right.
back into the. Um, so I mean, there's so many different ways, but I just love that um, we're becoming more environmentally aware about the impact of, and my father was a funeral director for 62 years. He got some award from the Texas Funeral Home organization that they have for being such a long time funeral director. So, I mean, I've, you know, kind of was raised knowing about that. But
It's
I was
funny.
going somewhere with that, but it's gone. Go ahead.
It's funny when I was a kid, my safe spaces were one was a cemetery in a small town in Georgia, and the other was like the railroad tracks. And I didn't think that much of it then, but you know, now it's like it's poetic, you know. And the cemetery that I used to play in and spend a lot of time in when I was a kid is just was just so old. And
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe they got some funding, but you know, they cleaned it up and it looks a lot nicer now than it did when I was a kid. But um yeah, I spent a lot of time. And it's funny because I work in a funeral home now. I work in a very nice funeral home. And you know, on my break I go and I walk around cemetery and I feel at peace. And I do think that there's a lot that we can do in the industry. I think that the death positivity movement and being death positive in general is the natural way we should think, you know, and the way that we should care for each other and ourselves. Um, Understanding that life is what happens between birth and death, because we recognize birth so much. It's weird that we don't recognize the other side. I mean,
There's a
it's
quote that I got from something that you said or wrote. I don't know, but you said death isn't the enemy, chaos is. So
I said that. I like that. I like that a
you did,
lot.
you did. But well, I think maybe it was even in an email. I don't know, or LinkedIn. I don't know, but it was like I thought that was brilliant because okay, culturally we have been indoctrinated to think that death is the enemy, and we're always fighting to live and all of this stuff. But
Right.
when you said the chaos is really the enemy, that really struck home to me. So talk about that a little bit.
I mean, that's what I do every day. You know, I mean, on the death positive movement, that's the second pillar is basically pre-planning, you know,
Oh yeah,
is making sure that you're not like if if I died tomorrow, you know, we have to think about it this way. Who's going to be the one that's going to have to pick up the pieces? You're we care for our people so much by all these things. We plan for we pay for insurance for our car, life insurance, plan funerals. I mean, plan vacations, but we don't plan for something that we know is going to happen, and
exactly.
it's absolutely stupid. And the only reason we do it is because we don't want to admit that we're mortal. I reached out to somebody recently, and I mean this happens more often than not, and it's but we were talking about stuff, and I was like, hey, you know, if you and your family ever need, you know, you want to plan some things, and this is a person that was getting up there in age, and his reply was, oh my gosh, Ryan, I hope me and my family never need your services. I'm like for bruh, like for real. Like I I just I I'm gonna be honest here because I wrote something snarky back and then I deleted it and I retracted it and I wrote something less snarky back. It was still snarky, but it wasn't as snarky. But
Hmm.
no, like I've been in chaos too many times where you know, a lot of the young people, a lot of the my friends that I grew up with ended up addicted to drugs and
Mm.
dying and dying very young. And of course, nobody prepares for that. But then, we hit this time of life where there's a season of death. Everybody has these
You're
season
talking
of
about
death.
COVID?
No, just in general, like,
Yeah.
when you have these trifectas where you're like, okay, Aunt Bobby died, Bruce died, whatever, and you
We
have
always
so many
say it
people.
comes in threes, right?
It comes in threes, and and
Yeah.
and you're like, and if it comes in threes, and I see in every family, there's usually one person that takes care of all of this stuff. The person that's the realist, the person that's the caretaker. And I think that that's something that's almost genetic in us, that is historical. And historically, women were the people that took care of births, and people that took care of the bodies when they died, when people died. And in our lifetimes and in our parents' lifetimes, death has been so industrialized and so behind the curtains, and it's made to be so icky and abnormal and morbid. And what's abnormal and morbid is the fact that we think that it's abnormal and morbid. Every person that's listening to this, and every person that's not listening to this, is going to die. It's just the way it is. And I'm not saying go out and eat Takis and chase it with vodka every day or anything like that. I'm saying the opposite. Like, live a good life because you're going to die. Live a good life because you appreciate it, because you know that that eventually it's going to be over, or eventually it's going to be next. But think about it.
There's
I don't know.
a there's a person that, God, I interviewed him years ago, but I like to refer to something that he taught me. He said, but he was teaching me while he said this, and he was quoting an oncologist from Switzerland who did studies about people that had a good death, and that was defined by people that didn't have pain at the end of life or anxiety, and their symptoms were well managed, basically. And that's qualitative, but it was,
Right.
the in this study. And there were groups of people that consistently had good deaths, and they fell into four categories: people that had had a near-death experience, the Anita
Hmm.
Morjani's of the world; people that had had near-death awarenesses, and that's when people um, see someone coming from the other side before they die, which gives a real sense, which is common, which
Oh,
gives a real
yeah.
sense of excitement or peace or welcoming. They're being welcomed to
Yeah.
the other side. So near death experience, near death awarenesses, people that had faith because of their religion in an afterlife.
Hmm.
And the fourth group were people that were curious, people that talked about death, went to death cafes, death deck. I mean, things that they are death over dinner. They were comfortable in the conversation about death and dying. They're listening to this podcast because they're curious and they're want to know more. So those were four groups of people that 80% of them, 80% of each one of those groups had a good death. And
That's
I would
so
just add to
beautiful.
that, you would need a hospice to help put you in a situation to have that. But yeah, I
I
just
love
think
that. And
that's fascinating.
so you're saying that listening to your podcast makes you live longer. So
No, I'm not saying it makes you live longer. I'm saying that it
it makes you
makes
have a good
the
death. Yes.
possibility of you having a death that is uh, without fear or without anxiety hopefully surrounded by loved ones to care about you, but you're prepared. You use that word,
Yeah.
prepared, and you're
Prepared. I
ready
like
to
that.
go. I think the preparation is key, and to have the support system around you to give you what is needed for your particular trajectory to just easily pass, almost like, I mean, with my father, it was just like seeing a thread, the thinnest thread let go.
That's
And
so cool.
he'd had a near death awareness before he died.
How old were you when your father passed?
I was 57. So I was, I was, that was a while ago, but I was 57 when he died. He died in 2007. So everybody can add up the math and know how old I am. Mm.
I feel like I feel like I've prepared for my father's death for so long, and I don't know that I ever will be, you know? I don't know that I'll ever be able to be as good for him that I would like to be, or say I'm sorry for some of the things, or
Is he
you know,
still alive?
he is. And I was just down with him, and I took some video of him with the girls, and I was straight up with the girls. I was like, you know, one of these days he'll be gone, and you won't have anything. You won't be able to. You'll need to have these things to remember him. I was like, be mindful, be present, talk to him, understand him. And so we did some off the cuff recordings, and they weren't pretty, but I put them up on Facebook so that they'd be there. Um, but I want to make sure that my relationships that matter, that's so key. The ones that matter. I think that a good life leads to a good death, but we put so much exercise into the wrong things, and we do that so messy. You know what I
And at
mean?
the end of life, none of that stuff will matter,
No.
because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and I've been at many, 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 many bedsides. The only thing that's there, in the right environment that's curated and created, is love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I just feel like we've covered so much ground, and there's so much more. We're going to just have to talk again. Maybe we'll do it on your podcast, or somehow that you want to use this.
That
I mean, take whatever you like and just use it however you want. But to my audience, I apologize for the glitch, the little edit that's in here. But um, Ryan, I just want to thank you. Well, first of all, no, before I thank you, is there anything else you want to share with this audience?
I no, no. I don't think so. No, I appreciate it. I'm gonna watch more of your stuff. I've got a 45-minute drive to work, so
Good.
no, like I'm excited. But if you guys wanna,
You were talking about your girls. And I know
oh
that
yeah,
that's and your dad, and kind of preparing them. I know one thing that I wanted to say for, and then you can uh,
riff.
respond. And no, I'm just, the best way for people to deal with death is to see death. And when they see it,
Mm,
and it's a good death, it really takes the fear away from what we see in the movies, or what we've anticipate that it's going to be a very dramatic moment. I mean, it's a heartfelt, grief filled moment,
yeah,
but it is not the scary thing that culture has led us to believe, or the church has led us to believe. And um yeah, so that's just my experience. So as far as you preparing yourself for father's passing, I mean, I would say the best thing is you preparing yourself for your own passing,
I
and let
appreciate
it be,
that.
and it being a conversation that death becomes normalized talking about it, you know?
How do we, how do we, how do we do that? Like you just pointed out something that as I talk about being so death positive, I'm not thinking about my own. I'm thinking about my father's. I'm like passing the buck. How do we, how even me, how do we start to do better about recognizing our own life through our mortality? How do you see that?
Well, I think you're answering your own question, quite honestly. And I have an end
Just
of
by
life
just by
train.
having the question? Just by
Yeah, I
having the
mean,
question?
yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Okay,
I
I
have
gotcha.
an end of life training that really I take people from getting a diagnosis to um, the actual time of death and the week of the funeral and the grief and bereavement. I mean, I take people through, not only the patient, but I take the families through that whole time period. As 79% of us are going to die of a chronic progressive illness. So there's time when
Mm,
you have a
right.
diagnosis to prepare. And one of the first things I say at the beginning of the training is, I know that, you may be facing a very hard diagnosis, or you are here as the primary caregiver or the spouse, and you, or the daughter or the son, and you are just thinking about them. But I'm going to ask everybody in the training
Yeah,
to put themselves in the role of being the patient.
I love
Because the
that. Yeah.
last thing a patient wants is to be told what to do. And I think if you go through the training as the patient, you are making your own choices, informed choices about what you want for the end of your life. And my favorite people that I teach are early planners,
Mm,
because they are there because they're curious and they don't
yeah.
have the burden of the grief around having a diagnosis. And there's not that emotional charge that comes with the loss of a loved one, or anticipatory grief of losing a loved one. So, uh, to answer your question, I think what you can do is just prepare your own death and make it
Mm.
something that is normalized, and you would fall into the early planning category. And
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
yeah, and you're at
excellent.
the dignity memorials, and I'm sure one of the things that you do is support people who are pre-planning their funerals, and you've seen the value of being prepared, and how that takes a burden off of the family that's left behind.
And once a family does it, like, you keep that family because then they know how valuable it is. But we've got, and I'll send you one of these. I don't even care. I'll pay Australia shipping. But we've got a personal planning guide. It is pretty cool. It's like,
I'd
you
love
know,
to see it.
yeah, it's interesting because it gives you all the things that you have to ask yourself, like, or you have to plan for. And I don't want a traditional. I want celebration of life. And when it's asking me things, I had never really thought of my pallbearers. I didn't think it because originally I just thought I was the guy that was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get cremated and then just throw me in a ditch, throw my ashes out the window as you're driving down the highway or whatever. But like,
People
if you really
need the
think
ritual. People need the
right,
ritual
and
of
people,
being part of your death and being introduced to society as the new
it's
people that they are, because you have passed.
yeah, it's and thank you. Yeah, you put it so much more wisely than I would, but and also I started to think about because if I am going to get cremated or if I want them to because everybody grieves differently. I want my children, because I got three very different kids, if they need to go to a place where quote unquote daddy is, I want them to have that option. So if I get cremated,
Mm.
then I want to, maybe there's an internment, or something where they know that they can go to Roswell Funeral Home or Winkenhofer or wherever, something like that. But like I'd never really thought about that. And the interesting thing is it goes back to I didn't value my life as much as I do now,
Mm.
and being so much more connected to death is really interesting at how much more I value my life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Say that
Is that
again.
that's I don't you just cut it. I don't remember. I
That's
can
beautiful. Being
but yeah,
close
like
to death has made you value your life more. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally get it.
very much so. Well, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation, and
Oh, yeah.
I
Ditto.
look forward I look forward to listening to a lot of your podcasts on my drive to work.
Well, I hope they're inspiring. I mean, I love talking. I love talking about this, all the topics around death and dying, and that you meet the most interesting people from just so many different parts of the world with different backgrounds. And I know how I even knew about you was because of a friend that I have in Tasmania who met you in Bali. So I love that about this world,
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
are all connected, even though we are very, very far away. So
A
thanks,
lifetime away
Ryan.
in Bali. Yeah, you're very welcome, Claire. That
Yeah.
was that was a lot of fun. Now you get to start your day and I get to close mine out.
All right. Well, you take care and we will stay in touch. And thank you so much for your story. You've really got an amazing story, and I can't wait to watch you grow.
No, thank you. I will ping you for some mentorship.
Anytime, anytime.
All right. Bye,
Thanks
Claire.
so much to all of our Dying Your Way listeners, and I hope this has been illuminating for you. It has been for me, and yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Bye,
Thanks.
Alicia.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on Dying Your Way. If it's inspired you, then please spread the word. Leave a rating and review so others can find out about us. To learn more, connect with us on Facebook or our website at dyingyourway.com. A special thank you for the artist Mel Dobra for letting us use her song, Smoke and Flame, as the soundtrack of our show. I invite you to return, hear each episode, and be part of the conversation on death literacy. I am Claire O'Berry, and this is Dying Your Way.